Picture this. You're relaxing on a beautiful summer day when you get a notification. Nintendo's airing a Direct tomorrow? Oh boy, what could they possibly reveal? A brand new 3D Mario? Smash Bros maybe? Another Pokemon? The next day, you hop on the Discord call with your friends. Or if you don't have friends, you just watch a streamer. And the reveals start dropping. Headlines blur together, port after port is announced. The end of the show soon approaches, and it's 5 seconds of Link sleeping? No 3D Mario? No Pokemon? No nothing? And those smug Xenoblade fans got 3 Switch 2 editions of their entire trilogy and a new game announcement. Why is it that they always get what they want? Why does Nintendo prioritize this stupid JRPG series? Did they forget about Mario? Well, friend, the solution is clear. If you can't beat him, join him. It's time to accept the inevitable. Xenoblade is and always has been absolute peak. One of Nintendo's best series, it is completely deserving of all of the attention it's been receiving. And with the entire franchise soon to be represented on Switch 2 with brand new shiny Switch 2 editions of each, and a new game out next year, I am positing that now is the absolute best time to get into this amazing series. So what exactly is Xenoblade, and why should you care? Well, if you're brand new to the series, and maybe all you know are the characters that make an appearance in Smash Bros, and maybe a couple catchphrases,
I'm really feeling it!
All you need to know is this is an RPG series with incredible vistas, banging music, lovable characters in a heartfelt story with immense scope, and a unique combat system that blends turn-based and action-based systems. Ask 5 different Xenoblade fans what their single favorite aspect of these games is, and you'll likely get 5 different answers. For me, one of the biggest appeals of this series is the exploration. These games do open worlds with a true sense of scale, unlike any other in the JRPG. The first game takes place on the corpses of 2 titans that destroyed each other at the beginning of time. The second features multiple living titans that serve as the only habitable land in a boundless sea of clouds. And the third game is a beautiful open world that incorporates, well, I'll just say that once you've played the first 2, you'll have many moments of familiarity. Now, what about Xenoblade Chronicles X? You might have heard of this game. It's somewhat of a spin-off of the mainline trilogy. The game was originally released for Wii U, and I consider it Nintendo's first true open world. I believe the Zelda team took many lessons from Monolith Soft in their creation of Breath of the Wild's Hyrule, and in my opinion, it's one of the greatest open worlds ever created, with immensely satisfying exploration. More on that later. Now, what good is exploring beautiful landscapes if you don't have equally beautiful music to accompany it? And this is something that people inside and outside of the fandom can absolutely agree on. The soundtracks of these games is bar none some of the greatest music ever composed for video games. And no, that's not hyperbole. Each game features wonderfully arranged tracks with genres ranging from romantic-era orchestral to straight-up heavy metal. Free jazz, to rock opera. And the overworld themes make simply running around these vast areas a joy every time. The battle themes never fail to generate hype. And big story moments are supported perfectly by some of the best music you've ever heard in a cutscene. Speaking of story, this will almost always be in the top spot for reasons that fans adore these games. Truly, the Xenoblade trilogy is some of the best storytelling you'll find in or outside of gaming. And that's no surprise coming from legendary director Tetsuya Takahashi, whose career spans decades of working at Nihon Falcom and later at Squaresoft as a graphic designer. In the mid-90s, this man and his wife, Kaori Tanaka, also known by her pen name, Soraya Saga, submitted a script for a little game that would become known as Final Fantasy VII. The script was rejected by the higher-ups at Square for being considered too dark and complicated, at least for a Final Fantasy game. Fortunately, they let Takahashi continue with the concept he and Tanaka wrote, and the first game under the Xeno branding was born, Xenogears. Since then, the Xeno franchise has been known for its incredibly ambitious storytelling. Seriously, there's this whole lore bible called Perfect Works. It's like a 6-episode series, of which Xenogears was planned as episode 5. Very Star Wars coded, right? Perfect Works catalogs the entire epic saga, or, well, story, I guess. Xenosaga is another series that began at Monolith Soft, the company Takahashi co-founded, and eventually was acquired by Nintendo. Anyways, before I get too into the weeds here and scare you off, let me make it very clear that Xenoblade itself is a lot more approachable. The first game wasn't planned from the beginning to be a part of a 6-episode series like Xenogears. It can be approached as its own thing. In fact, each game in the Xenoblade trilogy and X can be treated as standalone stories for the most part. And especially if you start with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, you have nothing to worry about as far as being lost or needing any sort of context. The story has a very easy beginning hook to get into, an increasingly complex middle section, and an epic mind-blowing ending that sticks the landing. Now, these games are JRPGs, so they have many of the conventions associated with the genre. And if you're like me and not exactly a shonen fan, Xenoblade 2 might not be to your liking, but narratives in these games just have such a way of getting you incredibly attached to the characters and drawing you into the setup. Before you know it, you're main pathing the game just to see what happens next, like a good TV show. And as the third act approaches, everything you knew before is turned upside down. There's action, romance, betrayal, moments of empathy from the people you least expected. And by the time you reach credits, you sit there with a single tear rolling down your cheek, speechless to what you just experienced. The stories of these games really are so good, and I just can't praise them enough. Now, you might be wondering what game to start with, and I'll definitely cover that later, but for now, let's talk about some of the common hurdles that new players encounter, and what might turn you off of the games if you're not prepared. When I talk to people who have tried Xenoblade but fell off of it, there's almost always one reason: the combat. It is true that it can be a bit of a hurdle for many, And even myself, as someone who played the original when it came out on Wii in North America in 2012, I wasn't immediately convinced by the battle system. To be fair, it was also the first real JRPG I'd played, and my first exposure to non-action-based combat system. But still, it took a bit of getting used to, and the main thing was that lack of control over each attack. So the way the combat works is your basic attack, just the one that deals out the most consistent damage, is an auto attack. So it requires no input, no button press or anything from yourself. However, this doesn't mean you relinquish control in every aspect. It's not an auto battler. You're still in charge of controlling your character's positioning, which is important for maximizing position-based effects, in addition to selecting special abilities called arts to deliver damage and to apply buffs and debuffs. It's very much like a traditional active turn-based RPG, think of like the original Final Fantasy VII, but with much more active input on character positioning and a bit more tension due to the necessary timing of combos. I've also seen it compared to the way MMOs handle their combat, though I've never played one, so I can't personally attest to that. This is the most basic combat explanation, and of course you can expect it to grow in complexity from there. However, most of the games are quite good at slowly adding and explaining each additional layer to this combat system so that you're never overwhelmed. The only exception to this is the original Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and maybe the original release of X on Wii U. But with Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition and hopefully the upcoming release of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Switch Edition, their tutorials will be brought in line with the quality of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition and Xenoblade Chronicles 3's tutorials. Also, if you do end up getting confused when playing one of these games, the YouTuber Enel has the best combat guides to help you fully understand how to take advantage of all these systems. Definitely check out his channel if you start playing these games. Now, what we were just talking about, tutorials, that's the other common criticism I've seen hurled at Xenoblade. Oftentimes they're called overbearing and excessive. And I won't lie, each Xenoblade does have many tutorials. However, I do think it's overblown in online discourse, and much of this discourse came about as a result of Xenoblade 2, a game that really does have quite awful tutorials that don't even do an adequate job of teaching you how to play the game. And in even worse cases, it sometimes just gives you flat out wrong information. When we consider the series as a whole, I think too many people use the shortcomings of Xenoblade 2's tutorials to unfairly discount all of the game's tutorials, when in reality 3 and the definitive editions of 1 and X have all made tutorials quite easy to understand and pretty streamlined in my opinion. And with the imminent release of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on Switch 2, I'm very hopeful they'll rectify this issue, since it's one of the most commonly cited problems with Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Some think the series just has too many tutorials overall, but again, I disagree. By and large, a Xenoblade game's tutorials will mostly be explaining mechanics that are absolutely crucial to understanding combat, exploration, and leveling. And while I certainly won't encourage skipping these tutorials, for those who have experience with things like buffs and debuffs that show up in every RPG under the sun, there are certain universal mechanics that you can kind of just skim through the tutorials of. But again, this is kind of something to be careful of because you don't want to get to a point that you're just skipping past every bit of text and not understanding how things are working. Alright, so having gone over all the positives and defended against the naysayers, hopefully you're considering giving this series a shot. So which game should you start with? Well, to be honest, the answer is whichever one piques your interest the most. They're all quite different in many ways, so some players will strongly prefer one game over another. For most people though, I think the original is just the best place to start. Specifically, the Definitive Edition. For one thing, it's got a brand new Switch 2 edition that basically makes the game the best it's ever looked. But even if you don't have a Switch 2, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition runs and looks perfectly fine on a Switch 1. And the remaster itself comes with tons of quality of life features that make sinking dozens of hours into the game a breeze. I think this game also is the best way to get into the combat since it doesn't really throw too much at you at once. I'm not saying the other games do that, I'm just saying that this game really is probably the easiest entry ramp to understanding the combat. The story is also just classic, and there's so much iconic scenery, it's hard not to recommend this as the definitive place for newcomers to start. Now, one little addition here I will make. This might not work for everyone, but say you're one of the tens of millions of people who loved Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Most likely, the exploration was a huge reason why. And if you're an exploration-first kind of gamer, Xenoblade Chronicles X might be the best place to start for you. This game is an offshoot of the main trilogy, with far less focus on story, but much greater emphasis is put on the exploration and side quests. It features a further refined version of 1's combat system, plus an incredible open world with no load zones, like Breath of the Wild, and flyable mechs in a futuristic alien sci-fi world. If any of that sounds appealing to you, go ahead and give X a shot. It's got a definitive edition on Switch 1, and Switch 2 has an edition as well, although there is, unfortunately, a little bit of a caveat there. They use some sort of AI upsampling sort of thing. I'm not exactly knowledgeable about all the technicalities there, but you might be best in a lot of situations to just go with the definitive edition that released on Switch 1. Maybe consult Reddit about the Switch 2 edition. If you've always been curious about 2 or 3, absolutely go ahead and start either of those. They are everything good I've talked about previously in terms of storytelling, exploration, and active strategic combat, but they each have their own flavor. I will say if you have a Switch 2, though, you might be best off trying Xenoblade 1 for now, and then tackling the sequels as they begin to release throughout the remainder of the year with their Switch 2 editions. Alright guys, I think that about covers it. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you're more interested in Xenoblade overall. If you have any questions about this series, please leave a comment below and I'll try to respond. And even if I don't, the Xenoblade fanbase is a very dedicated bunch, so I'm sure someone will. If you liked the video, please feel free to like and subscribe for more content like this. And with that, I will see you in the next video. Take care.